Concealed Wisconsin Podcast, Episode 10. Welcome to Concealed Wisconsin, a podcast about guns, Wisconsin, and you. In today's show, I'm going to be talking with the legally armed citizen who thwarted the armed robbery at the Aldi's grocery store in Milwaukee back on January 30th. My name is Andy, and I'm the host of Concealed Wisconsin. I want to thank you for tuning in to today's show. There's so much stuff to cover, and I want to give all of today's show to my special guest, so let's go right to that interview. Thanks for listening. All right, and joining me on the phone right now is Nazir Al-Mujaahid. Welcome to Concealed Wisconsin.
Definitely a pleasure, Andy. Thank you.
Yeah, before we get into the interview, I want to just touch base a little bit and ask you what it's been like having reporters and other media people chase you down for interviews and things like that.
I'm glad you recognize they do chase you down. Unfortunately, I really think most of the pressure came from the media. I mean, of course, the situation that we face here in Wisconsin was the first of its kind, or is the first of its kind. And they wanted a story more than anything. So it was pretty much a headache to deal with them showing up in your backyard, beating on your door, acting as though you have to respond to them. So, I mean, it was really a mess. I mean, even at the courthouse, I had to use a decoy to go sign me in when I went to meet with the DA and stuff like that, so that they weren't all of my business. And that's the main reason I held a press conference to, get the story out once and for all to all of them after I received the facts about the perpetrators. So I could do it on my terms, have control over it, get them out the way. So I'm grateful that the last few days it has definitely calmed down with the local media.
Right. Well, that's good. And generally that stuff blows over. They're looking for the quick fix and the big headline, and then they move on to something else. But we're talking with Nazir, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Nazir was the unlucky fellow who stumbled into a armed robbery at a local grocery store. And luckily for him and the customers in the store, he was armed with a concealed weapon, legally carrying a concealed weapon. And so we're going to just talk to him today about his experience so that we can understand it from his perspective. Many of us think about that and we train for that, but it's a whole different ball of wax to actually go through it. So we're going to talk about that. And then just some philosophical things about carrying a pistol for self-defense and mindset training and things like that. And then we'll continue on with just some conversation with him about what he's got going on in his life. Now that this has happened, he's started an advocacy website where he's talking about his situation and trying to help others in their pursuit for self-defense. So we're just real excited to have you, Nazir, on the program. And for the listeners out there who want to find out more about you, at the end of the show and at concealedwisconsin.com, there's going to be show notes that will have all the links to your information as well. So I just want to ask you what it was like, bring us up to speed on that day when you went into the Aldi's, and just kind of tell us your story. I won't interrupt you like some of the media does, and I'll let you just kind of tell us, what you were thinking and, and how that played out. So go ahead and bring us up to speed.
Okay, good stuff. I do appreciate that. First of all, I just want to let everyone know that this is not something that I'm necessarily proud of or you brag on, not something that you ever want to be in the position of having to draw your weapon on another human being, period. But I believe that there are definitely lessons that many of us can learn from, including myself. I think I have learned more reflecting on the situation than anyone else. Long story short, I didn't plan to go to the Aldi. Basically, my wife and I were running late. Our daughter's running late getting out of dance class. We picked her up, and instead of going to where we normally go, we were going to stop at Pick and Save. We were closer right to Aldi. She said, let's go ahead and just grab the vegetables. So stopped. She went inside initially. I wasn't going to go inside. I was just going to actually wait in the car with the kids. And instead, I received a phone call, and my youngest son, he's 8 months, he was a little fussy. So I said, let me go inside. He could sit with his siblings. He'll be all right. So I went in the store, found my wife. She was just about done, put the groceries on the counter, wasn't having a good day, looking at me, talking to me. and I was also on the phone on my Bluetooth. And in my peripheral vision, I see a guy with a shotgun out pointed, what I thought to be at the cashier. I believe, reflecting on it, he may have been still walking the security guard over because the security guard had his hands in the air. Nevertheless, he had it pointed to her head, the cashier, and as I noticed it, I told my wife to get out the way. And there's a moment of clarity. At first, it's disbelief. As denial kicks in. It's like, I know that I'm not about to witness an armed robbery right here in the store. And of course, that only lasts a nanosecond. And I realized, of course, this is an armed robbery. Told my wife to get out the way. I backed away on an angle. Customers started moving once they became aware of what was going on. And of course, the robber got the barking commands, give me the money. I'm telling everybody, stop moving, put your hands up in the air. However, during that time, I had already unholstered my weapon, put one in the chamber, and put my left hand up in there. I didn't put my right hand because I had my pistol. I know that you have to commit to a decision, and I was fearing for the young lady's life, the cashier's life, my life. He was waving the weapon around at different customers. You never know what someone's going to do or if they're on any type of controlled substances, or you just never know in these circumstances.
Right.
So decisions had to be made instantaneously.
Nazir, let me interrupt you. I said I wouldn't interrupt you, but I'm going to.
Oh, go ahead.
How close were you to this person with a gun? I mean, like feet-wise, was it a couple aisles, a couple feet?
Okay, well, here's the deal. And this is when I reflect on it again, this is what makes me just really know that this was destined to happen in this manner. It could not have been set up in a better fashion, all right, if somebody planned it. All of the aisles were closed but one. Okay, so the only checkout lane that was open was the one I was in. And I believe there's 4 or 5 lanes. I think there might be 5 lanes. So if you're coming in the exit or you're coming in the entrance or the exit doors, let's call that lane 1, lane 2, lane 3, lane 4, and lane 5.
Right.
The only one that was open was basically lane 4. That means no other customers were in the lanes 1 through 3. Okay, so it was empty over there in that area.
Right.
All right. So I was right next to the conveyor belt, and the clerk had to be maybe, at the time, while you're at a conveyor belt, the clerk maybe 7-8 feet away from you. Mm-hmm. But again, we made our distance once we saw this gun coming up. We backed up. I backed up out the entire aisle. So I was then behind the aisle. So it was maybe about 20 feet or so from the individual as he's barking commands. And when I stopped and was standing on an angle with my hand up, so it's about 20 feet, I would guesstimate. Okay.
Yeah. And what was the customers doing at that time? I mean, they saw the gun. He was barking commands. Was there a lot of yelling? Was it calm? Was it chaotic?
It was relatively quiet. There were a couple women that were beginning to cry immediately, and I think those were the ladies that were in front of me because they were really close. I don't think they may or may not have even retreated from the aisle. They might have just got stuck. They might have recognized it too late. I'm not 100% sure about that. But the cashier, she was becoming hysterical. She was putting the money in the bag as quick as she could. You could hear her, and then you could also hear, of course, the armed robber. At the bottom of his face is masked. He had a hood up. He still had the gun out. He's waving it. He's telling her to put it all in the bag so he can't, kind of getting greedy, if you will. And became more agitated. And one thing I know from my experience is that someone gets agitated, anything could happen. Anything, their fingers slip on the trigger, anything can occur. And I'd already committed at the time to end the situation by whatever means necessary. So there was a gentleman that was behind the man there's a counter in all these stores at the back where you can bag your own groceries and stuff. Right. And there was a guy that was behind him who would have been in the way, if you will. So in the line of fire. Exactly. He'd been in the line of fire. Exactly. So I caught his attention. I was looking at him. He thankfully he caught my eye. I kind of nodded my head to move, and he understood what I meant. He didn't go after the attacker, the armed robber or anything. He moved out of the way. The armed robber let him move. He had his arms up. He came toward the front of the store, I guess you would call it. And he got out of the way. So now there's nothing between me. Well, there are lanes and other stuff like that, but there are no humans, I should say. There's no people in between me and the armed robber. So that's when I put my weapon up to fire. and I didn't take the second safety off, which is above the trigger. So when I pulled, nothing happened, which seemed like forever. But I knocked the safety off, let off a few rounds immediately after that because he was pointing at me at that time and moving. So it's not necessarily easy to to hit a moving target in this high stress situation. But then I had fired a few more shots. I don't know exactly how many rounds I let off, but I'm guessing is probably 6 or 7. And he did get hit. I know. I mean, I was close enough to hit. I knew. I wasn't sure at the time until the officers told me that I definitely hit him. But he was hit. He fell down into the door glass breaking everywhere. And after I saw him fall into the door, I felt the threat was done. We were no longer in danger. And, he ran out of the store. So that was that. There was no need to continue firing outside, none of that stuff. So the situation was resolved at that point. So that's what happened there. Then I walked by the door. I saw he dropped the shotgun, kicked it over to the other area, and the clerk saw that he dropped a bag of money. So she picked that up and got that out the way. And I believe that took all of about 5 seconds from my engagement to the end of it. It took about 5 long seconds with which to be over with. So
after 5 seconds, you fired off, and there's so many questions I want to ask, but I'm trying to stay focused. When you're done shooting and he's gone, what were the customers' reactions at that time with you having a gun, obviously, interceding on their behalf and saving them, so to speak?
Customers, they were still paralyzed from the looks and standing still, just looking. And I had to yell, call the police, call 911, and it kind of snapped people back into reality. Then they grabbed their phones and started calling 911. And the manager had a great head on her shoulders. She let people know to come into the office area, it's safe in there. So people felt more comfortable coming into the office area. I let them know I'm a concealed carry holder. Call the police. I'm going to be here till they arrive. It's okay. We resolved the situation. So I talked to the people like that, and I let my wife know to get the kids because again, my children were in the car, but they were still outside. They saw the guy run outside and to the getaway car, I believe. So they were brought inside. Then of course the police came. I put my weapon on the counter, and I put my ID and my concealed weapons permit and stuff like that. And I let them know I'm the shooter. So they dealt with me in a very professional manner and stuff like that. And that's when the investigation began. And everything was sealed off for questioning and reviewing surveillance tapes and so on.
So. Bring me to speed when the police arrived. How again did they treat you? Did they treat you with a little bit of caution? Did you surrender your weapon? Bring me through that so that people know what to expect. And obviously it's not going to happen this way for you. Sometimes you're going to have a gun on you drawn. Sometimes it's going to be all over and they're going to treat you differently, but right. Share that again, just so people understand. In this situation, I didn't want any confusion or mistakes. I didn't know what to expect. So what I did was I took my weapon, I put it on the counter for them to see when they came in, and I put my identification and my concealed carry permit right next to it on the counter. Mm-hmm. So when the police came in, they had already received the calls that a customer had opened fire and stopped an armed robbery. So when they actually came in, they were professional. They were expecting somebody there. They were expecting a citizen that had done some good work, I believe, because the very first thing I recall an officer yelling out, he said, this is the good guy's gun. We have 2 weapons here. This is the good guy's gun. And then he saw where I had kicked over the shotgun. He said, that's the bad guy's gun. So he had already called me the good guy, which is a great relief. They didn't come in with, guns out and drawn and all that type of stuff. They knew it was over, I believe, based upon the 911 calls. But of course, they separated me and requested a statement and so on and so forth, and treated me with great respect. That has not always been my altercation with the Milwaukee Police Department, but in this particular situation, it was very professional, and I'm greatly appreciative of that treatment. Yeah, that's good to hear. When we've talked about it on this show before, and just given some instruction to people on what they should and shouldn't say to police officers and things like that, because anything you say can and will be used against you. And so, we really tell people under those circumstances to say as little as possible and ask for your lawyer. Did you do any of that, or did you feel?
I evaluated the situation and circumstances because part of my training. Well, number one, I'm familiar with. I have access to attorneys 24 hours a day through a legal plan that I purchased. So if you're detained, questioned, or whatnot by any police officer, you do have access to attorneys. So I did have access to it, but after evaluating the situation, going over everything in my head, I felt that it was best in this situation to let them know basically what happened in general, let them know how I felt about it, whose lives and things were at risk, and have them verify with the video cameras, which they did. And, it worked out for the better. And that's also an option that you're given, or I learned in the training course that I took from GoCCW.com with, okay, you can wait in the attorneys, and it may take a long time, and it may be best depending on the circumstances surrounding the shooting. However, in my opinion, this was so black and white and so clear. A gunman comes in wielding a sawed-off shotgun, that I spoke enough to give them details regarding what happened and how I felt about a situation. They understood. They looked at the videotape. It corroborated. I mean, I haven't seen the videotape or the surveillance videos yet, but obviously, it corroborated everything that I mentioned, and it was that's it.
Do you know, is the videotape something that will be public record at some point, or is that something that is going to be concealed for a while?
I don't know. I know that the case is still open. The guys confessed, and they also knocked off 2 previous businesses, but I'm not told either or. I mean, I'm assuming eventually it will become public, but as of this time, I have no idea if or when.
Yeah, I mean, just from a training standpoint, it'd be interesting to see the actual reaction time and count the seconds and things like that, because as you learn in your training, we tend to block out certain things, and our short-term memory gets interfered with, and our adrenaline picks up and everything's in slow motion. And so it'd be interesting to see how that all plays out, but it's great that it worked out the way it did. And a couple things that struck me as you were talking is, I carry a Car PM9, which has a 6-round magazine. And according to some reports, you fired 6 rounds. And so if that were me, I'd be out of ammo. So I'm just curious from your standpoint, maybe your gun's bigger as far as capacity, but if that guy had maybe been hit, or you missed him and he decided to take some shots, would you have been able to continue? Do you carry an extra magazine? Is that something you would or choose to do now if you didn't at that time? How has this whole thing changed the way that you carry from the perspective of ammo?
Okay, well, from the perspective of ammo, the first thing it changed was the caliber. Now, mind you, I was told by someone who had reviewed the surveillance video when I went in to the meeting with the DA's office, that had my safety not been on for that very first shot that I was trying to get off, that the perpetrator would have no longer been with us.
Right.
All right, so, in circumstances, and I mean, that situation, if I did not have a safety on, it would have just been one shot.
Right.
Okay. So, that's good news to know, but, it wasn't destined for him to die in the situation.
Right.
And for no one else to get hurt, which is great. One, yeah, I did. I carried a Steyr 9mm high capacity magazine, so I had 13 shots. I did not empty the entire magazine at the scene. I did maintain control in the situation. Again, like I said, after he was down and ran into the door, I could have continued firing, but there was no need for that. There was no more threat to us. Our lives were safe, and we were good to go. So other than changing to a larger caliber, I don't feel the need for an extra magazine. I mean, these types of situations are extremely rare. Again, when I mention, I say, this is something that I'll suggest a concealed carry permit, because it's good to have it than to need it and not have it. So right. The magazine that I have with what I carry now is the same. I mean, it's 13. It's a high cap magazine. It's 13-1 on the firearm, and I should not need more than 13. and working on, of course, my aim and marksmanship, if you will. But I don't feel situations really warrant that much. And if that's the type of situation, if there's a situation that warrants more than that, I would definitely hate to be involved in it.
Right. Yeah, and there's two different sides to that story. Of course, you have the guys who carry a 1911 full size with 2 extra clips, and that kind of evens out the weight, distributes it a little bit on the body, but they're carrying 45 caliber with 40 plus bullets, and that's a lot of weight just from a practical standpoint. And my gun is a very lightweight gun, very comfortable. I have an inside the waistband holster, and it's uncomfortable enough. Now I do have an extra magazine, but I usually carry that in a bag, a shoulder bag that I have access to, but certainly don't carry it around like a purse. And so it's a philosophy thing. So I mean, it's interesting to hear that from you. So the other thing that I noticed was that you said you took your gun out of your holster and put one in the you chambered around, and that's another philosophy type question as to whether or not you would choose to carry with a bullet in the chamber or go with one not in the chamber. And I'm just curious to know why you chose to carry. I know why I did for quite a while, but what's your philosophy on that? What's your thought?
Well, it really wasn't even a philosophy of carrying in that fashion. That was not what was intended. Basically, when I store it in my home, because I do have younger children, where we do talk gun safety here and we break it down and so on, I usually store it at home without one in the chamber, because my daughters, who are teenagers, they already know how to shoot and can load it, no problem. But I have younger children, and so I put the safety on and nothing in the chamber. So I just did not put one in the chamber. That was not part of my philosophy. And now, yes, I keep one in the chamber, absolutely, because again, every second counts. So that was not a part of my philosophy to carry like that at all. I just never come across a situation where I need it, and no one really knows when they will. So that is one of the things that I look back on and recognize the importance of always being ready with the safety and with having the chamber around. So yeah, I keep one there immediately. And there's on the weapon I have now, there are safety mechanisms on it, but as soon as you have the proper grip, you're good to go. Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about training and mindset. Part of a lot of training, and I know that you took your training through goccw.com, and I've reviewed their site, and I think that we have a lot of great training all over Wisconsin and in other states. I took my training in actually Minnesota for their permit to carry. I live over on that side of the state of Wisconsin, but part of training programs tend to include something about mental preparedness or mental exercises. And they tell you that the best way to prepare for something is to mentally go through that process in your mind, including things like convenience store robberies, ATMs, maybe a mugging outside your car. I'm curious to know, did you spend any time thinking about how you would react in that situation? Would it happen? If so, did it play out in real life the way that you had mentally prepared?
Well, it's kind of a yes and no to this, because I did not run through different scenarios that could occur and how I would react, because there are too many variables to put something together and say, this is how I would do this, or at that angle. The most important things are to be aware, because awareness, of course, is key. And then the fundamentals of treating every weapon as though it's live, that every weapon is loaded. So those fundamentals came into play quickly, like, all right, that weapon is loaded. We're in danger. Number one, our lives are in danger. This is definitely a lethal force situation. Now, these decisions are made automatically. They're made subconsciously, most likely. Okay, so I'm like, all right, that weapon is loaded, and this is me going back to the situation. He's coming in with a shotgun. That weapon is loaded. Our lives are in danger. Okay, then, of course, I had to look at not pointing my weapon at anything I'm not willing to destroy. No problem. Third thing is, I need to know my target and what's beyond it. Mm-hmm. So when a guy got out of the line of fire, there's a wall over there. there's some some seriously strong glass, if you will, behind him, and there's no other patrons and stuff like that. So I knew what was behind the guy. So these things pretty much clicked in fast, and of course having your finger on the trigger. So these things, coupled with the awareness to know what was going on, allowed me to get a better vantage point. Because as I saw him, I told my wife to get out the way. We began moving immediately before other people even noticed that the guy, that there was an armed robbery about to happen. I mean, I didn't see him at the cashier. I saw him before while he was walking in that direction. Some people didn't see him until he was right at the cashier's head, and they're frozen. They really couldn't go anywhere because he was saying, "Don't move, get your hands up," and so on. But we had already moved out of the aisle by that time.
Yeah. So
awareness, of course, is crucial, and then just knowing to be able to have a cool head with it, because I had to unholster it, had to cock it, all of that stuff while this was going on. I mean, of course, he could have possibly hurt it. You know what I'm saying? It had to be done quickly, had to comply and act, had to follow his orders and stuff like that. So this is not something you can really prepare for. I mean, you can likely do training and be aware or have some reflexes and some muscle reflexes built in, of course. But mentally, I wasn't able, or I did not go through a number of different exercises. Mine was more based on awareness and knowing that, if something needs to be done, am I going to be able to do it?
Right. And
in this situation, there was really no question on it, man. I'm fearing for my life, my wife, and then, he's right at the cashier's head and he has a shotgun. There's no telling, what he was on, what he was smoking, if he was smoking anything or what he was on. And he was getting agitated. And the more agitated he got, the more intense the situation got. And it was time to take action. And that, again, this is a matter of seconds with which it occurred. Right. So I haven't done any mental, just to answer it, that's why I say yes and a no.
Right. So now, it's interesting when you go through a situation like this, specifically, because the media, they want to get you out. You just stopped a robbery with criminals and bad guys and things like that. And one of the earliest reports that I saw stated that you didn't want to have your identity revealed for the very reason that, you don't know who these guys are or who their friends are and things like that. But the media, they push you out in front and want to make you the poster child for whatever they're trying to sell on their paper without thinking through the fact that you still have to live in Milwaukee, and you don't know who these people are. What are your thoughts on that as far as your current safety and your family's safety and things like that? Have you heightened your security, and if so, what are you doing?
Yeah, well, you never know, period. I mean, there's no certainty in anything. Just as quickly as you could stop in a store and somebody comes in and robs it, that was not part of the plan. So we never know much. And I'm a strong believer in that if something is destined to happen, it's going to happen. Okay, so we can only do what we can do, and however it ultimately turns out, it'll turn out. However, after receiving some more information about the family and the guys who did it, I felt comfortable that these people are not involved in necessarily organized crime or even highly intelligent with what they were trying to do, nor do they have the type of infrastructure or family or likely associates that would be the type for retribution and revenge or whatever, they may call it. And especially, that the guy, he's injured and whatnot, has the opportunity to still be breathing right now as opposed to being dead. So, based upon that, I was able to, ascertain my safety concerns. Of course, I've, stepped things up a little more, become more aware, because now more people are recognizing me in the street from the public, and you never know who's a friend or foe.
Right.
But again, you would really kind of be extra dumb. Not that people aren't extra dumb, but if you come after somebody that's alert and they're also carrying concealed, and their families are carrying concealed, to protect themselves in self-defense, wouldn't be a wise move for anybody to try that.
Okay, and going back to the media, I want to tell you that my first impression when I saw your interview was of great relief from a Second Amendment advocate standpoint. My fear was that whoever did this shooting was going to make us all look bad. And in reality, I was very impressed with how well spoken you were and articulate and well thought out you came across, which I think was a very good thing for the Second Amendment and left very few things for them to criticize. How much time did you put into that thought process of what you were going to say beforehand?
I really didn't. I didn't. Well, here's the thing. I come from the inner city of Milwaukee. Okay, so as a youngster, I did a lot of stupid stuff. Okay, I admit I did a lot of stupid stuff. Got into trouble as a juvenile, and I remember even having conversations with some friends of mine, some associates at that time, where I said, I'm glad we don't have concealed carry here in Wisconsin like they have in Texas and stuff like that, because I wouldn't be such a knucklehead, if you will. But thankfully, some people saw more of me than I saw myself as I grew older and matured. And I, got away from that lifestyle. I become Muslim, so I changed my life around, and that had the largest impact on me more than anything else. However, as I got older and I knew the mentality that I had when I was younger, I really shared my story with a number of different youth when I'm talking to at-risk youth and children or speaking at different events. But I learned leadership skills in speaking by some business mentors. I have a business mentor who was kicked out of school, who's a 2-time felon, and he's making 7 figures a year, really helping and empowering other people. And he came from right inner city Milwaukee, from the South Side. So, I didn't really have to take much into it because of my beliefs in the Second Amendment and in liberty and being able to protect yourself. So I was going to answer their questions, with the media in order to do it on my terms. I don't like when there's a lack of respect for people, when they're throwing microphones in their faces or they're trying to take advantages to sell some more advertising time or jeopardizing somebody's safety and risk, again, just for the story. I mean, it's kind of, it's a different way of pimping, if you will. It's, pimping for media coverage or media time and so on. So I didn't like that. So we decided to go ahead and, we'll do a press conference on our terms at our location, share some information with them, and at the same time, dispel the myths that go around when it comes to the Second Amendment and concealed carry people. Mm-hmm. I've heard so many times that people feel that, hey, they were expecting some guy to be some loud talking, redneck guy, that just wanted to start his own militia when it comes to, carry and conceal, when factually, there are so many different types of people that take the training, it's impossible to say who the average concealed carry permit holder is. Mm-hmm. And I like that because there's so much of a variety, but no one would have thought, number one, a Muslim, and then someone's African American and Puerto Rican, so I'm Black and Latino, and I can actually form a sentence, in order to, articulate what we're talking about here, because we're talking about a much larger situation. We're talking about liberty. We don't need to have the legislature actually legislating how much training is needed to basically make some training companies rich.
Right.
I'm a man. I could decide what training companies I want to invest in for myself as opposed to it being a law, because now that makes it harder for me to practice my rights. And at the same time, people don't understand the difference in what a law is and what a municipal ordinance or a color of law is. So when they look at stuff like posting a sign, and, number one, the sign was so ridiculously posted in Aldi's, it's really shameful. It's not on any of the entrance doors. It was on a side wall between the entrance doors. Now, I don't know about you, but usually when I go into a building, I try to go through both of the doors to get in wherever I need to get to, whether it's a hotel or whatever. I don't usually stop between the doors like it's a hotel or like it's an elevator and look on the wall at what looks like advertisements, especially when there's a circle, when there's an advertisement, I believe they had of a handicap thing. They had shoplifting. They had a security camera sticker. And then on the bottom, there was a small circle with a line going through it, which is blue. Usually when somebody says no, something like no smoking, no left turn, no U-turn, it's usually red. It's pretty, inconspicuous, if you will. So I didn't see that. So it didn't matter. And, I'm glad I didn't see it, because it likely wouldn't have patronized them, just went on, and we could have been hearing about somebody's body being taken out from that robbery as opposed to what did happen. So, I just felt that it was very important to speak on the issue clearly and go a lot deeper. And whether the person agrees or disagrees with Scott Walker, I don't agree with him on everything, but I definitely agree with him on at least allowing the people to have a voice in this situation, because we've wanted concealed, people in Wisconsin have wanted concealed carry for years, but it was vetoed twice due to the governor.
Right.
Well, this governor, whether you like him or you don't like him, it really doesn't matter. He didn't have a huge part to play in it, meaning that he just let the people, hey, if the people want it, we'll give it to the people. So, that's what happened here. And I'm grateful and thankful for that because, by that being on the books and by the DA reviewing all the facts and everything carefully, they didn't have a hard decision with which to make, saying, okay, look, all of this falls within the letter of the law. We appreciate this here. And there's no charges or anything else that's going to happen. This is how it's supposed to happen and occur. And, again, I'm grateful for that as well. But it's important that we be the voice of concealed carry because it's not a stereotypical type of person, and if a person doesn't like him, it's the Second Amendment to the Constitution, and it's second for a reason.
Right.
It's a right that we have, and if we give up our rights, then we don't deserve to have freedom is what it comes to.
Mm-hmm. And yet one of the interviewers that I listened to just the other day, he asked you what I would call a trick question, and I think that the police tend to ask this type of a question, and he asked you something along the lines of, well, did you shoot to kill that person in regards to your aim? And he was fishing, but you answered it the right way, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, well, I shot to stop the threat, protect my family, the people in the store, things like that. I think that, the media is not generally out for your good. They're out to sell papers or stories. As you think back to talking with the media or the police or the DA, why is it a good thing to carefully answer your questions and probably have a lawyer with you instead of just spouting off, things to whomever might be there?
Oh, absolutely. It's imperative, again, and it depends on the circumstances, but you have to be mature. You have to have some type of experience with the judicial system and know its intricacies as well as the police. Okay. So if you've never had police contact any before, if you think the judicial system is just A-OK and they'll believe you and treat you well in the situation, then that is living in a fairy tale. But when you have interactions with the police or you may be related to some officers or whatnot, all of this stuff is important and to protect your rights and where you are when it comes to having an attorney. And the reason is none of them were really there. None of them are there. Okay, so depending on a person's attitude, a person's behavior, whether they like you, dislike you, people might not like my name as Nazir Al-Mujaahid. There are many different variables that go into things, and there are many different variables that can get you locked up. All right, even if you've done the right thing, if you can't articulate it in a proper fashion, if things don't check out properly, if something may have been forgotten, there are lots of tricks that are used. So, 99.9% of the time it is best, at least in my experience, prior to this incident, to remain silent about it, have an attorney there, try to calm down because you are nervous. Something like this happens, adrenaline is still pumping through you, then you have the nervousness of, man, now are you being looked at as a criminal? There are a lot of different questions and a lot of different things that occur. So if you're not versed with the legal system, if you've never been down there to see its its reality, if you will, from the good things that occur to massive corruption with judges. And I'm speaking frankly on it because it's real. There's a very strong lack of oversight in the judicial system, period. And there's a lot of political connections and things that go on, depending on something's an election year or not. There's a lot of different factors that go into it than just the facts of what may have happened in the shooting or in the case. So you don't have much experience there. It's best to get with someone who does, which of course will be a good attorney.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're starting to go off onto a different show of mine, and maybe I'll have you on there for that. But, in a serious note, we do strongly encourage our listeners to even carry inside their wallet, like you pulled out your ID, basically a cue card that says, this is what I answer, this is what I don't, because you're not in a good mindset after a critical incident like that, where you're thinking clearly and your stress is way up there, I can only imagine. And so the best thing to do is not answer questions and say, I want to have a time to just calm down so that I can try and remember things the way that they really happened, because you tend to forget. But one of the things I think people see is the CSI or the police shows where the cops bring you in there and you just spill your guts, and we get acclimated to the fact that cops can just, get whatever they want out of you and you have to answer. But our Constitution does not require us to do that. This isn't Nazi Germany. This is America. And, we have rights, and hopefully we're law-abiding citizens and we use the rights for our benefit. But those rights are there to protect us. And so I appreciate what you said on that. And it's so important to remember that everything you say can be used and will be used against you. So make sure that we're careful when we're talking. And but anyway, back to training. You mentioned training. Wisconsin has a minimal training requirement, and some believe that there should be absolutely no training requirement at all, leaving the individual to get their own training that they feel comfortable with on their own needs and requirements. Now, you decided to get training from an outfit, and you're now, from what I read on a post on Facebook, you're now considering getting even more training. What are your thoughts on training? And I'll let you know, I'm much more of a constitutional carry guy. I don't think that we should be legislated to, for our constitutional rights, but I am a very big training guy. I spend a lot of time on the range. I spend a lot of time, reading books and doing exercises. What's your thought on training, and how much a person, how much would you recommend a person get out there and get trained?
Well, excuse me. I'm a constitutional carry guy as well. So my recommendation would just be my recommendation or suggestion. Right. I don't believe that it is necessary to have a legislature dictate to you and give you rules and regulations for training. Some people are better at others naturally than each other. I mean, it really doesn't matter from that perspective. I believe in training because if you're holding something that can destroy, which, firearms can do, willfully, they're neutral. They can destroy a child, they'll destroy property, they'll destroy you. Okay, so I believe it's imperative to learn how to handle what you choose to work with, especially in, self-defense situations. If you're carrying for self-defense, or if you're doing sport, then it's probably good to practice, because practice does make permanent, if you will. I mean, it's like, okay, I want to play football, but I'm going to have to, learn the fundamentals of it. I'm going to have to learn how to throw, catch, pick up a ball, run. I mean, there are just some fundamentals in everything that we do. So with gun ownership, in particular concealed carry, should the situation arise where you need to use it, it just makes sense to learn how to use it, the same as when we learn how to ride a bike. So how much to be dictated, I don't know. It depends on how good a person is, what they plan on carrying, or whatever the variables are. Myself personally, I want to be very good at it. I want to be very good at the weapons that I have, because I have a large family. I mean, I have 7 children. So my oldest is 16 and my youngest is 8 months. And I want to be able to make sure I'm able to teach them how to also defend themselves and use firearms properly and safely, as opposed to having them in dangerous situations or being infatuated with a weapon at a friend's house, or seeing it and, doing anything stupid with it, so that they're safe as well. So again, I'm considering going to Front Sight actually within the next month or so to get some training. I heard some good things about there, and then I heard some others, so I'll go check it out myself. I have a lifetime membership that I purchased last year for training. So, I believe in it because I want to be the best that I can be with something. So, that's where I stand with it. But I strongly against the government telling us how to, when to, and making it pricey. I mean, they could have, they had a 4-hour requirement. They got rid of the requirement and all that stuff, which is fine. But, I'm a grown man. Let me, I can make my own decisions regarding how and where to go and how to spend my money and so on, as opposed to, 80,000 people paying you $50 for a permit. And that adds up to, a lot of money going up there, but I don't know how much necessarily coming back, whether it's man hours or otherwise. It already tends to be too big, and we don't have this massive bureaucracy. So constitutional carry actually would have saved a whole lot of state funds, if you will, and a lot of state resources, so that the CIB and Department of Justice would be able to focus on crime, in my opinion. Again, that's me there, but I don't believe the government needs to dictate every single thing. And I guess I sound more like the candidate that's getting blocked out currently with the GOP, which is Ron Paul, but I feel strongly in alignment with a lot of his positions.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that constitutional carry would have definitely helped in a lot of that. And in all the interviews that I've done, I tend to ask, what their thoughts are in regards to training and things of that nature. Are you anti-training? And every constitutional carry guy that I've ever talked to, or a woman for that matter, has said, absolutely not. I'm so pro-training. I'm just pro me getting the training and deciding what's best for me, and not having someone else tell me I have to get a certain type of training or whatever.
Absolutely.
Now, moving on to a last little topic here, the shootings that people imagine in their mind. I think a lot of people think in terms of video games, and they don't realize how real it is that people can actually get hurt, that people can die. And, I think of your situation, and you talk specifically how your safety was on and that saved that guy's life. I don't get the thought that you wanted to kill anybody. In fact, I get the thought that you would rather have not even been in that situation at all. And luckily it played out the way that I would say was a best case scenario under the circumstances. The bad guy wasn't killed. The robbery was stopped. He got arrested. You didn't have to go home with that on your shoulders that you took someone's life. Now, not everybody walks away with that regret. And maybe the fact that you just shot somebody has taken a toll emotionally or whatever. After the fact, there are some things that go through our minds and abilities to think clearly. What do you do, or what have you done to be at peace with yourself under the circumstances and stay connected with a healthy attitude towards this? I mean, you did the right thing, but a lot of people do the right thing and still have regrets. It goes back to that mental preparedness. What are you doing to stay mentally healthy through this?
Well, for me, it's not a big deal so far as a lot of extra stress or emotional issues, because I know that looking back at the situation, the two things I'd have done differently, I'd already had a round chamber and I wouldn't have had the safety. That likely could have ended up in a different position. So what was meant to happen was already meant to happen. There's the fact that a guy came in, he was threatening other people's lives. He was obviously the bad guy. That guy had to be neutralized in any way possible. So I did what I could at the time, and that situation turned out good, meaning that, like you mentioned, the criminals are apprehended, no one else was hurt, so this is the best case scenario. So I'm grateful for that, period, because had it been, let's say he'd have been killed, I would feel bad, but I still know that I didn't do anything wrong in the situation. I likely saved lives in the situation had he died. But again, the good news, he didn't die, so he still has a chance. He's still breathing. He still can potentially change his life around should that happen or not.
Yeah.
But that's not my responsibility. My responsibility lied to the people in there who were innocent bystanders, who were there, who were still traumatized, maybe more traumatized than I did, because they likely felt helpless. They couldn't do anything.
Right.
He had one up on them. They didn't have a weapon on them. They didn't have a concealed carry or open carry. So They may be in more of a predicament than I, where they feel insecure going into a store, where I feel, a little more empowered because I have a neutralizer or something on me that can, possibly change the circumstances should a life-threatening situation present itself again. So, basically, I'm already heavily involved in personal development. So whether it be listening to my daily Tony Robbins exercises or reading the books that I read, 10 pages a day, these things keep me on the proper perspective. And of course, as being a Muslim, I know that if the Prophet, may peace and blessing upon him, who stated is an advice to us to say, if someone is doing something wrong, to change it, to change it with your hand. If you can change it with your hand, change it with your hand. Mm-hmm. Or if you can't do that, then to change it with your tongue, speak out against it, say something about it. If you can't do that, then to do it with your heart, but that's the weakest of faith. So try to do something about it. So I knew that I was still complying at the same time. This was not just sit back and be passive. This was, if you can do something, then do something. Because the other alternative would, there are so many what ifs, and I don't like to talk about what ifs, but since there's so many people talking about, well, what if this had happened, or State Representative Leon Young says, This raises the question on training. Obviously these are people who've never been put in such a stressful position where so many decisions had to be made. They actually had to follow through. This is, a what if and what. The great thing is all those what ifs didn't happen.
Right.
But what did happen is a guy got shot twice. He came in, tried to rob it, put our lives at danger. No one else was hurt. Yes, there was some broken glass and, a register got hit and stuff like that. But other than that, the what ifs are really irrelevant. I mean, what if we were checked out 2 minutes earlier? What if I didn't go in that night? All of these things are irrelevant. It's like saying, okay, what if my mother never met my father? So these things, these hypotheticals are really a dime a dozen, and they're shameful when it comes to the situation, instead of speaking upon the facts. And sometimes people just like to have a platform with which to spew information or get what they think is their point across.
Yeah, and the anti-gun groups. I don't know if you're familiar with WAVE, the Wisconsin Anti-Violence Effort. They've obviously jumped on your story and are being critical and highly negative. But if you've been to their Facebook page, they don't have a lot of positive things to say about guns. And if you try and put something positive about guns on there, they just take it off their site anyway. There's no two-way communication with them. It's very much what they want you to see. They tend to fear everything anyway and prefer. Actually, one person had said that they would have preferred to face the criminal with a gun and not have to worry about the customer with the gun, which blew my mind, literally blew my mind. Have you had any interactions with the negative aspects? You've talked about how supportive people have been in Facebook and, and emails and things like that. Have you had to deal with a lot of the negatives? Hate mail or anything?
Not much at all. It's been overwhelmingly positive. But like my grandmother said, for people like that, common sense ain't all that common. So it really doesn't matter to me. I mean, again, where I've come from, I've experienced a number of different things. And I know that guns are neutral. Guns, kill people just like, cars kill people. Actually, cars kill a lot more. I mean, I lost a brother when he was 16 years old. He was killed by a gun. The case was a mistaken identity. He was murdered in cold blood. I mean, 16 years old, and a guy thought he was someone he just got to a fight with. He mistook him because he was light-skinned, tall, and had curly hair. The guy who beat him up, and that's just how my brother looked at 16 years old. But I don't blame the gun, for what happened. It was actually the guy behind it. So these anti-groups have never been in these circumstances and situations, and they speak just like the different radio show hosts of all the what ifs. Have they have a gun to their head, or if that was their daughter or their wife or someone that they love that was that cashier, they would likely have a different opinion due to it. And one reason they say call the police is because the police bring the guns. Right. Unfortunately, we look at situations where sometimes people don't last. I mean, I had a friend of mine or a friend of my family who was a friend of my brother who got killed. He was killed a couple years ago in a Playmakers robbery. He complied with the robbers. He laid on the ground, and they robbed the place, and they still shot and killed him. He was in his mid-20s.
Yeah.
So again, these variables about, I'll take my chances and stuff like that. It sounds good until you're in that situation.
Right.
So I don't, again, have much to say to people like that, but, I definitely wish them the best of luck, and prayerfully, they'll come around. But again, as I was younger, I shared the story because there was some information put out by the Journal Sentinel. So that's basically what they're regurgitating.
Right.
But we have to give them a proper amount of time for a retraction. So we're in the process of working on that. Nevertheless, I don't look at my coming up and the things I did as a negative. Matter of fact, they were actually a blessing in disguise because I do have those street smarts. I do know how people think and how different people behave in certain circumstances, and I can relate. At the same time, being an entrepreneur, being a father and family man in my community leader, that I already know both sides of the story. So I use that to my advantage. I don't hide from it when I mentor at-risk youth. I think that's important to build rapport, because if we're going to change something, we have to first let people know that this type of situation we must be supportive of, even if in our hearts people don't support it. But if you have the idea or the inkling that you don't, then you let criminals know that you're vulnerable. But if you say, yeah, I may carry, then you know what? It'll get around to criminals that their grandmothers and parents and other individuals in the community are carrying now. That deters crime, just like it's done in the 48 states that have had concealed carry before us. So, it's all a strategy.
I know you've got to take off. You got a meeting here coming up, and I appreciate your time. I wanted to give you one opportunity just to talk. Now that you've got this experience and you've got a platform to share it, what have you got going on over at ccwadvocates.com? Share with the listeners. Maybe they can take a peek at it and see what kind of training or education they can get, like they get from this podcast. What do you got going over there? And maybe just take a second to talk about that before you have to take off.
Okay, good stuff. Definitely glad you brought that up. Basically, what I decided after looking at things, I got some encouragement from some of my business partners as well. Said, in this type of situation, the media takes things, they spin with it, and you may hear a story that may have been inspiring or may just have some questions, but you really can't reach out to these individuals yourself. So what we did was we decided to go ahead and start ccwadvocates.com because we've been advocating for concealed carry for so long. Advocating for concealed carry for so long, and also practicing open carry. And with that, so people can now reach out to us directly as opposed to waiting on the media or trying to sift through media articles. They can hear what's going on. They can learn from my experience. I can share the situation that occurred, give a little bit, some details and so on. But at the same time, promote different advocacy groups like, Wisconsin Carry, for example, where Nick Clark is the president over there. He was I reached out to him. He gave me some great information to really work with right away, and it helped out. And there are others, like some people were asking, well, who's my instructor? So, let them, hey, it's at goccw.com. So there may be resources and things where people can benefit. So we decided, let's go ahead and start it so they can hear from us directly. Like this evening, we're going to have a conference call. I'll kind of share what happened, from my perspective, what happened, what I've done differently, and allow people to ask questions so, they can also feel part of the discussion as opposed to being told what the media wants you to tell or stop some sound bites and stuff like that. So you can go to they can go to ccwadvocates.com and they will get updates, and they can, pretty much participate in a growing concealed carry community where we're encouraging people minimally to go, if you can, go and get your concealed carry permit. Do whatever you need to do to get it, to at least empower yourself and your family with some type of security, or even if you don't plan on having it, let people know you support it, because just knowing that and having that knowledge out there deters crime and criminals by having them think, that person may just be carrying. So that levels the playing field, if you will. So that's what we intend to do at ccwadvocates.com. So if a person wants to reach, they can, email us, communicate with us directly. I mean, I would love to have spoken to the young lady in Oklahoma. I mean, she had just lost her husband, and less than a week later, guys tried to break in and do who knows what to her. She's on the phone with 911 with a shotgun and protect herself and the baby. She has to shoot the man. She's forced into the situation at 18 years old. But I do know when I get the positive comments in my inbox or emails, and people see me in public and they're congratulating me and thanking me for standing up for the community, that feels good. That is reassuring. But I don't, if she was into internet marketing or anything like that, then we could also reach out to her the same way, because these things of support always, they help, they're encouraging. And we know that there's a community out there that cares as opposed to just a quick media story. So we opted to, again, try to put the control in our hands to control the format and this platform, and to really reach out to people to take advantage of the Second Amendment right, especially with what's going on with what Obama just passed with the NDAA on January 31st, the indefinite detention of Americans. And I believe Congress just passed allowing 30,000 drones now to patrol U.S. cities. So the times are changing and things are getting very, very challenging. And we do not need to give up any of our rights. We need to utilize them and respect them, even if for some reason we may differ with things amongst ourselves. We're all humans, and we can, agree to disagree, but that doesn't mean that we give up any of our rights whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, everybody, this has been a great interview with a person who I personally just want to thank for being a part of this show. And, thanks for taking the time. Look forward to hearing more from you. And if I can catch that conference call tonight, I'm going to definitely try and sneak in and listen and hear what other people have to say. But as for standing up for the community and for your rights as a person, as an American, I applaud you and thank you for doing that and being willing to step in and get between a armed robber and the public. And you did a great job there, despite the negativity of some. I hope that if I were in that same situation, I would have the courage and the fortitude to do that as well. So thank you for being a part of the show. We'll look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you, Andy. I definitely appreciate you. And just remember, a wish changes nothing, but a decision changes everything. Be well.
Thank you. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode, so thanks for listening to Concealed Wisconsin's podcast. Again, please check out the show notes for this episode at concealedwisconsin.com and visit all the links mentioned to see how you can get more involved. Concealed Wisconsin's a unique online community, and we encourage you to become part of it. Head over to concealedwisconsin.com and leave a comment, become a fan on Facebook, or subscribe to us on YouTube. Remember, you can always listen online, download it to your computer, or take us on the go by subscribing on iTunes. Check out all the links at concealedwisconsin.com. Thanks for listening. Now get out there and carry on. Concealed Wisconsin, copyright 2012.